I've had people ask me about the history of the fighter, of the Dart series. Because they were asking about why it's called the Mark 30. And in other videos, they've seen a Mark 60. And this is a fighter I've been working on over close to 2 years now. And it gets tweaked every once in a while and had some big upgrades once the Warfare update came out. So I thought I'd go into a little bit of the engineering, which is a little beyond the original talk in the other video, which was about the logic behind the design. So I guess if we were going to start with this, we're going to start with my original idea of coming up with a very light ship that can use the minimum amount of parts. And that's where we get into this guy. And yes, the fighter, I guess if you would talk about its parents, it would definitely be this one. This was a Horse Scout that I use for really just kind of quickly running around and getting an ore detector as close to rocks as possible. It has one thruster in each side, has two gyros. It'll survive with one, but I took a second one in case I get attacked. And usually guns will aim for gyros first. And that's also the reason why I have the spotlights. They seem to attract the gunfire. I don't know why. So this simple design was where I got the engine concept of doing something super small. So then we get into probably the first dart, which is kind of very simple. 2 engines to get as much thrust as possible. An ion, since I assumed that it would be damaged very quickly because of the hydrogen tanks being, I think this only had one hydrogen tank. So it just had a lot of heavy armor on top. And it was my starting point for figuring out how I would deal with pirates that were attacking Lunar City back in the day. And that's where it started. And then once I got there, we get into actually playing more with the shape, and a lot of other YouTubers talk about playing with design. But I just wanted something that was heavily armored that could take a beating and then find a way of adding weapons to it later. And you can see from this, it shares a lot with the original design. Double the number of engines, but at the same single thruster. I mean, not single hydrogen tank, O2 gen, and just a very basic, simple system. And I put a rotor in here so I could put additional ore detectors and antennas and other stuff, electronics. I started up the idea of having electronic package, which is probably a lot easier now with the hinge. You can pack a lot more stuff into a space. And this is a later model. In the wrong spot, but we'll look at that later. So out of the other design of the double engine came this worker. So the same logic kind of went into this. Everything got rearranged. We put some little reactors and other electronic packages. Again, we have a spot for our electronic equipment. Instead of having giant antennas and such, little stuff works. So just pack it all in there. So let's get back to the dart. So you can see we have a very basic engine system. Very simple armor. We styled it some more. And then once I started working on this, I decided to go with the lift body design. If you've seen NASA, photos from back in the 60s when they were working on lift bodies. So that kind of gave me an idea. So I went with a very wedge-safe system. We didn't have any other guns, so I went with a rocket launcher to be able to take on ships, and lots of turrets. The small ones are to take out missiles coming at me, while the main one was to shoot at targets. But usually guns shoot at each other, so that turret usually got taken out pretty quick. But again, I was assuming that the top would be hit, so we went with heavy armor on the top and a little actual chamber to get down into here. And you can see the view is very narrow. And having the cockpit so far forward usually causes it to be shot at. So that wound up being a thing that got to move back later on. I wanted to have a little entrance room and then realized that it was just kind of pointless. And also the view was terrible. So in a fight, we wound up the ship getting shot up and having no way to fight back. So again, this one still has it. But this time I went with a lot more glass. So now you can actually look around. And if you use the head tracking plugins, you can actually look around and have a pretty good view of what's coming at you. And you'll notice that the original design, you don't see the engine at all. It's buried deep in armor. So even coming at somebody, you had no chance of hitting the weapon. Not the weapon, hitting the front thrusters. But it made the ship very tall. But it was armored at the front, except for that very exposed rocket launcher. So wanting to make the profile a lot shorter, I started playing around with moving the thrusters forward, fit more stuff into the upper area. And in the next version, I was able to actually cut off a layer, move everything up. After a lot of battles, I realized that hydrogen tanks didn't go down as often as I thought, so I didn't need the extra ion burst. So I ditched that, which allowed it to get much more narrow. And to keep the gun alive, we have now a welder to keep repairing it. And it did okay. But again, it still took a bit of damage to... What would you say? It just took a lot of damage from fights since it had so few weapons. So for a while, I was playing with the design, trying to figure out how to get more weapons or keep the gun alive more. Overall, it was a semi-successful ship, but I kind of kept it in mind. And I started going to other designs for a while since I needed a lot more firepower. And those wound up becoming the Shield Maiden series of ships. Those haven't been posted yet. They went for a lot more firepower. And then Warfare came out. Warfare came out. I decided to go with a lot more heavy firepower directed forward. And one of the things that changed was I added extra engines to the top. We still kept the welder. Had artillery. Had this gun package. Everything's all heavily armored. So I was trying to keep the cameras alive. And keep the gun alive as much as possible. But one of the problems with this is that bullets just destroy small grid stuff very quickly. So the armor eventually got tweaked over and over as I tried to find a way to keep those guns alive, but they kept getting shot off. You've seen the other video I posted with the Brawler in a fight, and the front gun gets shot off. And again, it's the flimsiness of small grid against large targets. So eventually I just dropped the glass because the whole turret was getting shot off. So the extra armor on the front didn't help. Again, we keep the nice views. And it's starting to get taller, but the height is all the extra weaponry on the top. There's a point. And up here you can see where internal system's still pretty much the same. We keep the fuel tanks on either side of the thruster and gyros because they act as armor. There's plenty of times when the ship is hit and one of the tanks will explode, but because of this buffer of the engines and gyro, it will keep the other fuel tank alive and the ship keeps being pliable. And there's a third one down here. And again, with all the other stuff in the way, usually I don't lose all three tanks. I have yet to lose all three. I'll lose one, maybe two, but enough thrust is there that I can still maneuver around. So if you ever design stuff, keep in mind that you can use other components as armor to protect your fuel tanks. Doesn't need a lot. And down here you can see them. Playing with turret designs, still messing with the front. This is something new I started working on just to mess with taking an old design and modernizing it. So it keeps the three level high and the hidden thruster, but adds to artillery on the bottom. And keeps the cockpit further back. We drop an engine on the top. But otherwise it still has only two engines on the back. It's still a pretty light ship since it's mostly light armor, which I kept. So it's still a lot more maneuverable than any of the other ships. And that's another thing, is I try to go for 2 Gs of acceleration when designing the ships. In most PvP, you really want to have as much maneuverability as possible. And that is the most important thing with this ship. It's so small that you're just not going to have enough armor. So you're going to take damage. And this is when I first started messing around with the railgun, trying to fit it onto the ship. And of course I went with putting it in the nose like I have all other weapons, before I realized I can probably put it in a better spot on top. And that's when we got to this design. So we kept the nose turret, which I control. You did a custom turret on the top. And we added a lot more reactors and... sorry, I keep saying we, but I work with a lot of teams for work, so I'm just used to saying we. So, but we have controllers to control that top turret. And this is very effective as a sniper, but again, the nose turret just is very flimsy. It keeps getting shot out. First thing hit was the guns usually go for small grid before it goes for the large grid, so it almost always targets that nose. So if you build something, keep in mind that small grid stuff on the front will get targeted first, which you can take advantage of by putting something up there to draw the fire, or move stuff back and hiding it so that it doesn't get damaged. But as effective as this was, it was doomed because it got the 2 shots off, and then just had Gatling and assault guns to do all the rest of the work while we waited for the ship to recharge. And it just did not last. I mean, I got a lot better at piloting just because I had to keep dodging for a couple minutes it takes for the gun to recharge. And by this point, we get to the Brawler. With the Brawler, we dropped one of the railguns because it's only effective at the very beginning of the fight, and after that, all your other weapons are going to do the work. So we went with 18 assault cannons and the 2 turrets, one on the top and one on the front. And this is has been very effective. I've gone up against some pretty big ships with this. They're not expecting the railgun, especially on such a small ship, and usually I can get a quick hit in and fly off from there. And then from here, we get into the last series of ships where I realized that having the doors cost 100 each, so I was adding 1,000 PCU to the cost of the ship. So they were switched out with the smaller half with passage blocks. And one of the problems with the cockpit in the front, which is partially related to this nose gun, was that the cockpit kept getting shot out. So I moved it back and right up past the engine, so that way it was very hard to hit the cockpit. And we also got rid of the nose gun completely. With that removed, I can just put a camera in here for viewing, and just left it like that. All the guns were moved up back here because these were almost never shot. All the bottom armor was really good at keeping these alive. And then we have top plates to keep the guns from being hit when I'm maneuvering around. And this has been a pretty standard ship that I've kept around for quite a while, still using it, and it's been very effective. We have 2 mag plates on top for bomber duties. I'll carry payloads, drones, decoys, and other things that I drop off before a fight and then fly in. Now up to 3 control blocks for the guns. And this takes a bit of logic from Star Citizen. With they have something called gimbaled weaponry, where the guns will automatically target for you as long as they're within a particular, within a small range. So now I don't have to switch between the different guns. The guns will automatically shoot at anything that's in front of them, saving me from having to play around with those. And you'll also notice that there's grav drives. The grav drives are used to give me lateral thrust or circling a target. And this usually ends up being a better play than having them forward facing, because most of the time you want to try to get out of the way more than chase after a target. Again, the ship is usually used for defending a target, so I don't need to go chasing after somebody. I just need to chase them off. And if I punish them enough with fire, usually they'll back off for it until another time. And we have grav blocks centered in the hull so that I can use forward or lateral thrust, or I can even switch it so grav faces down, which I'm probably going to do in the next version of this, since it'll amplify the already existing downward thrust. And this is same dual ship with the cockpit moved back, but it didn't help. The two guns just providing enough threat for long enough. And you want a constant threat. And then we get up to the Model 60s, which were more of an anti-small craft, anti-Hydroman fighter. So it kept artillery, so I could threaten bigger ships, but sacrificed it. All the assault cannons for Gatling to deal with smaller maneuverable targets. And you'll see that I went back to putting the cockpit down in the fuselage, but moved it back and sacrificed one of the thrusters. And again, this is pretty effective, but it's good more against smaller targets than big ships. But the artillery allows it to at least face off against them. And that's still the original model. And in this one, you can see I have forward facing, so that way the idea behind this one is that it can reverse and keep backing up from an enemy so I can stay at a sniper range and just keep poking at them. But again, it's not very effective because even though it won't be killed, the target you're shooting at will just leave. And since these don't have jump drives, and they're not meant to, they're really meant to be disposable. They're really meant for going at an enemy, being destroyed, printing another one, throwing another one. Normally, I have a small carrier that carries 3 of these. But in day-to-day travel, I have the simple jump carrier that carries 1 fighter. And allows me to move it between bases. This is a 2 jump unit version. I have others with up to 6. And usually you can stack a lot of stuff onto this silk area. Now, well, the theory is good, but I thought it'd be fun to try out some of the ships to show you why some are more effective than others. That one's unarmed. Let's take this one. This is our most earliest version. See, if you look in my lower left, that gets 2 G's of acceleration in any direction, so very maneuverable. That looks like it's... Nope. These are old models that are not even set up with anything. Set that up. I'm in creative, so I should be able to shoot. And we're going to go after a modern ship. We even have cameras? Nope, nothing. Very simple. So let's go after Foham. Let's see how long this lasts. Are we not moving? We're not moving. Did I take off the engines? Wah, wah, wah. How did I lose my engines? Again, very simple, very quick to replace. There we go. maneuver advantage. That did not last a second. Yeah, so as you can see, you want to have better vision, better approach. But that's how those fighters started. These all. And that's the thing why the small guns kind of got removed in later versions. Once you get to the warfare, most people aren't using rockets. You know what? Let's make it. Pretty light ship. Again, we're still doing with, and this thing is probably closer to 2,000. Engines on. And much easier to see what's going on. Start our maneuvering. The difference between the other one and this one is this one has heavy armor, so it's able to last against the fire a lot better. Again. Want to keep the front aiming at the enemy. $400 about best. See, I can just pick apart enemy ships. And it held up pretty well. Again, this is the problem with having the forward cockpit. It gets taken out when the guns are. No, we're going to leave that one. And I have the same survival rate with player ships. The thing is so small, it's just hard for people to hit it. That 2 Gs of acceleration is just enough for me to evade most fire. People just don't have enough gyros in their ship to keep track. I think this is a modernized version which puts the gun further in. Yeah. But as close as we get. 2 thrusters and light armor. You probably won't survive long. Let's find out. We have that. We have our side cameras. Let's try the brake brake. I think the hammer's taking enough damage. External cameras always side. And just yeah, this light armor just doesn't survive. The other ones are a little slower, but have heavier armor, so they can take and kind of shrug off the Gatling fire. Let's go for the Brawler. The Brawler's the one that's designed to go after these guys. This is the whole point of this fighter, is to go up against these bigger ships. Again, this has a cockpit in the front and still has the turrets. This uses it up front. Go for something a little further away, so tagged en route. This. Situational awareness is very important. You gotta watch when you have multiple ships in a fight. And assume, which is what I did. And light armor is not forgiving. First mistake. Okay, we're gonna do. Once again, that's front got shot. Okay, let's see if we can recover. Let's do 5 and 4. Their giant. And that's why I got rid of the turret on the front. Very fragile. One thing you don't want to lose is your cockpit. Back. Then we're going to take a look at Suckerpunch. So you can see why I decided on using one over the other. Go one way out over the other. So this uses cut the very back. Let's make it 5K. It's a lot bigger ship. Okay. Copy. We have multiple cameras. No engine for me. Let's go after this guy. Turn that off. The rest are far enough away that they're not going to cause a problem. So, perfect. So this camera is for using the railgun. And I missed. Whoa! Take a look at how much we did to the ship. Shoot up a lot of armor. Got some thrusters. The ship is pretty tough. And this is probably the reason, well, it is the reason why I went with a lot more artillery over railguns, because railguns just don't have enough firepower. I mean, don't fire often enough. And I don't think the assault cannons are firing. Let's take a look. This is a build world where we only have about 20 kilometers in any direction, so we mark the center so that way don't get lost. Or fly a ship I'm working on out toward the edge. The turret. It's the wing. Let's take the wing ashore. There we go. Assault cannons, they're in there. So all set up. Should use those grav drops. Let's try them out. Now, I'm just going to remove that for this. I don't need to copy targets. I just want to see how much ammo being used. Always useful. That took a lot of damage. That one didn't take anything. Let's go back for him. Lights to sneak up on enemies. A bit of ship that got remained. Go with this and switch to the most appropriate weapons so that start to grav drive. There we go. Grav drive is definitely doing her job. Makes it very hard to miss. Much better. Makes a dramatic difference. Something's off. No. I have no thrusters left. What do we got left? We have our AI. Like I said, this is take a beating, especially with grav drives. We have two. We only have one. Let's go take a look. Let's see how far we did. So the idea is that it's going to do enough damage to drive off a ship. So she's talking about 5,000 versus 17,000. It's in the PvP years. Get up to... yeah, this guy hasn't been touched at all. He's still playing. Let's take a look. Let's copy. It's almost 18,000 PC. Let's take a look at new engine for you. Amazingly, the antenna hasn't been destroyed in all this fighting. That's a lot of guns. Very nice ship. Very nice ship. Go to the wrong one. I think I did the wrong one. Let's take a look at Brick Breaker. Is this the one I did? No. This one I haven't even been near. Right, lost a gun. Lost 2 guns. 3 guns. Interesting. So I think we can aim for propulsion might be a better goal. Or power production. Because that'll hit the hydrogen tanks.
Brakes off. Engaging hydraulics.
Okay, so let's take a look at ECU. Since this is more of a show on tactics, logic, skip weapons are ridiculously hard to destroy. Let's go for propulsion. Our power supply should aim more for gens. More likely that. Yeah, not quite 2 Gs. About that. Upward thrust, definitely over 2 Gs. drop energy too much, and that is it. We have no energy. They took out the batteries. And that's it. So we can do damage. Take a look. What did that do? Proper pilot. Much better. Aiming for energy definitely did a lot more damage. Didn't hit field tanks. And that's another thing. Gats seem to do a lot more damage. So with the bigger guns in use, and that gun is pretty much gone. This one has lost half its armor. So despite the smaller guns, it did a lot more damage. Completely shredded most of the armor, guns, engine. The only thing you gotta watch for is your speed. You gotta keep that energy up. And there you go. You get a piloting lesson as well as take a look at how to fight bigger ships. But 2G's acceleration, absolutely minimum. And that's the thing I've been messing with is trying to get the speed up. I really want to get 4Gs, but probably not going to happen immediately. So there you go. You get a chance to see the fighter in action with some good piloting. And what happens if you pilot wrong. And these are messing with the engine layout to get more thrust. And these are capable of 4Gs of acceleration. Yeah, 4Gs. Now, this will give me artillery. Do we have a camera? We don't. We're going to have a version with a camera. Do not. Quickly, a camera. Let's do a this big armor block. Why did it do those? Okay. And this might survive. We'll see. Maybe not. Well, we're going to have some fun. And when you're designing ships, I suggest trying to use them in combat situations. Now, if you want to see what ship that is, let's do Alt F. We're going to go to Entity List. We have all the darts. It's the battleaxe class heavy cruiser. It is a really nice ship. And a good test of your designs. What you do is you set them to all the blocks to owned by pirate. Turn on keep settings when copying, and then you just copy paste it to different locations so that you can try your ships on them. So let's see what the 4Gs do. So, camera down here. Block. Put 6. The wrong thing. You on. There we go. Oh, this guy's in range. SMGs have a lot more maneuverability. And you'll notice this has no armor on it. It's a half the weight of the other ships. I think we'll have to use this next. And this is only 2 blocks tall, which makes it even harder to deal with. And this is just using the engines, basically. Yeah, the whole center of the ship as well. It's still fighting. I just want to leave it alone. Oops, turned away. That was it. Any engine? Nope. That was funny. Save as. So empty creative is where I save the basic plugins I need for undo and keep, build, and repair. Or after I do tests, a lot of times the ships are nicked and dinged, and I can put that on it to repair blocks I completely miss, get it back into good shape, delete it, and blueprint it. Making a new file just keeps that ship in case I didn't save. There is a version that has grav. Now we saw that sideways thrust was a lot better than forward thrust. So we're going to do 9. And the benefit of this is I'm going to take one grav generator, reverse its field. Again, this is depending on if you want to use it for depending on if you want to intercept or stay away from that guy. Let's go against him. You can see the grav already. We do not have a camera. So you can see that high speed beats armor. Everybody else is far enough away. Try our grav version. This is using a grav drive. Again, keep that energy up. We have no armor, so we got to stay out of Gatling fire. Nice. can, you're trying to stay below a certain weight to keep up a certain speed. You can see they can keep up speed very easily. And there goes the engines. Technically, we should be able to do the same with our more artillery version. Just has to keep energy up. There, the ship is cracked in half. We're just going to leave the engagement zone. Keep maneuvering. Chance to see piloting in action. Things you got to watch out for is to always keep your energy up. You want to be at 100 meters far enough out that you can dodge shots. Now, railguns are a lot harder to evade. But that's why you turn. You're not on the same heading. Because the railgun, once it locks on, has about a second to fire, so you have a second or two to pick a new direction. Did we lose? Looks like we actually lost a chunk of thrust. Where did we lose it? Somehow. Gatling gun or something got our thrusters. Just don't know where. Still have that? I don't know. Let's take a look. And that's why I have build and repair, because somewhere in here there's something that got damaged. So if you're doing one of these build worlds. Add this. What? Please. Been duplicating stuff a lot. Let's just try it more. Interesting. And this is why we test stuff. Because it looks like one set of engines does not fuel the other set. What do you know? So now we gotta add. So let's do that one. In the process of building this, it looks like cockpit is. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, so keep that in mind when designing things. You got to take a look at oh, look at this. I'm going to redesign this slightly to make sure everything's connected. I think everything's connected at the rear. But it looks like probably because of this. Yeah, it's probably that one. Take that out. See, I added the engine in thinking it worked. Not realizing that was because both sets of engines. And again, this uses the same engine setup. Yeah, perfect. It's, I gotta find a better spot. What do you call it? For the survival kit. Hey, I talk English goody. Alright, let's try. Go back to our version that has 4 artillery. Artillery seems like it does really, really well. This has the grav. Grav is facing forward instead of to the side. I'm going to do there we go. Take this off. We're going to add it back. 9. This blocks it off. And this is probably the lightest PCU of the ships. It already has everything switched. He uses a welder. Let's keep that the whole time. And grav generator. Which way is it going? It's going to go to the right. That's broken in half already. Bow hammer isn't that. Brick breaker is probably what we get to. Let's copy. This is the no subgrid version of the ship. It's all the basic stuff. A lot of light armor. A little less than 2 Gs. Careful. Actually, we're doing this wrong. Good. So because of the lack of engine power, we have 4 on the bottom, so facing them down or up will allow us to get our 4 Gs, well, get a couple of Gs. We get 16. What is this? Oh. Yeah. That goes really wrong. That could have been a disaster. Never stop me? Alright. It's now. 2. We have the drives. Let's maneuver away so we don't accidentally Smash it to delete. We have one. So this uses a lot of the tricks from the other versions. Duplicate it again. Can we get the 2 Gs that they want? Or even more? Is that door? It was turned off because I was part of the engine at one point. Okay. So we're back up to 3. Oh. Let's see what ship this is. That we want the breaker. Let's keep track of that. Speed up. We have drive on. Now they're hitting. It's easy. Nope. Nice. Yep, this is doing very well. Twist. Get 3 guns working still. Nice. Yeah, this is definitely working much better. Go, go, go. A bit close. Good shoot. Gun, but it holds up. Let's get back into camera view. Let's push it. May have to turn this off. It'd be very hard to push in. Oh. That was almost a disaster. Let's push in again. We got 3 guns left. No cameras. Grav drive off. Lost a fuel tank. Back in. range. In a normal fight, will be targeted, so. But this far out, it's very easy to dodge. Using a lot of fuel. Out of range. There's our direction. If we had a better gun, we'd be hitting a lot more stuff. You can see this does pretty well. So as you can see, with decent piloting, you can take on pretty good targets. And it is pretty survivable. And as you can see, I lost the fuel tank. And we lost a bit of the components near it, but most of it's still intact. Just make sure you have artillery shells in each of your cargo pods. You're good to go. Contracts was just to be able to find the ship. If it's damaged, a lot of times I gotta go retrieve it. And if it has no power, that will let me hunt it down. And there you go. A look at our dart fighters and some of the design and flight characteristics. I hope you enjoy.